Revolution Radio proudly presents live from Phoenix, Arizona, the Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here for topics you won't hear about on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, nutrition, and conspiracy facts regarding your personal sovereignty. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
After a few of the news reports that I always do at the top of the hour, we will bring on the guest. This is going to be a very interesting discussion. I spoke with my guest today for a couple of hours, and I want you all to know it's a very, you really need to pay attention to this one, what is happening in the background, and the stance that she has taken in the courts. So we will get to her in a moment. In the news, Obamacare creates 50 state databases with no function beyond gathering potential voter information. This came out earlier today, about 1 o'clock this afternoon. Since the passage of Obamacare, all 50 state Medicaid agencies have been forced to create a new standalone database that contains nothing besides the contact information of Medicaid applicants who used the healthcare.gov website. Some of these new databases mail out voter registration forms automatically, and you cannot refuse them. No worthwhile verification occurs before the forms are mailed. Apply for Medicaid, and the form will be mailed to you. You will be verified citizen on a computer, period. That's it, because you filled out information there. Further, these new databases are accessible by groups like Organizing for Action, that's the name of a group, the Reconstituted Acorn, and malevolent figures like Chris Tarango. These are industries that are going to also have those databases. I'm imagining they probably made arrangements with the government, paid for that data. So I don't know what to tell you. I think it's just another level of, breaching our privacy and using the Obamacare website or healthcare.gov. I'm sorry, it's not called Obamacare. Healthcare.gov website as basically a way to collect all the data of American citizens. Just one more way. Sorry to give you the bad news. I don't know if you heard this or not. You might not be hearing it on mainstream news. I'll give you a link in the chat room. And those of you who have tuned in, if you're not on freedomslips.com, you want to join the chat room, because as we proceed through the shows, those of you who are new and those of you who have been listening for quite some time, and I appreciate you, we tend to, during the show, drop links in for you. You can bookmark them and read them later, or read them during the show, or even discuss them. So if you're just listening to the show right now on a player somewhere, like on the Truth Denied website, etc., you want to go to freedomslips.com and click Studio A, and you'll have a player there and hear the show live, and join the chat room. I highly recommend it. A lot of really interesting conversations go on in the chat room these days. On the site of UFOs in Arizona, and I'll give you the link right now. As a matter of fact, it's really interesting. This is current news today, and I find this one quite fascinating. UFOs have been in the news quite often lately. Let's see, Before It's News reported the story, and it read, "This is not just a UFO sighting. This is a mass of UFOs in the sky over Chandler, Arizona," which, by the way, is about 30 miles north of me. This took place on November 7th, so last week, captured on film with more than one witness, some forming triangles and some just out there with the video creator counting over 20 of these objects. And then more coming in as they're watching these 20 objects piling in. Some of them even recorded 30 to 40 of them at a time, objects in the sky. According to the details and what is said on the video, as this unbelievable sighting was happening, a military helicopter also showed up on the scene on the 7th. They just kept coming in. if this many unidentified orb-like objects are coming and going at will, then it could be said that we have already been invaded, which begs the question of why this isn't being shown on every single news station throughout the country. You've got to ask why. Why? By the way, I'm going to interject here for a moment, which is why it is very, very important that all of the alternative media that is out there, including myself, Revolution Radio, etc., is very, very important to you. A lot of you have already made that choice in your lives over the past few years. You have realized that going through the alternative networks for your articles, for your news stations and breaking news, etc., and radio shows like this, you have found that the information that you gather on alternative media is much heftier and the other side of the coin of the story that mainstream media is telling. In this particular case, this story wasn't even reported on mainstream. You want to tell me why here in Arizona on November 7th, I, who live in the state 30 miles south of Chandler, never heard a peep about 40 craft in the sky? But it gets better. According to the details, as I said, on the video, this unbelievable sighting was happening as the military helicopter shows up to the scene, which is that you know that's trouble when the military shows up. They just kept coming in, and if this was unidentified orb-like objects are coming and going at will, again, why isn't this on every news station throughout the country? Well, you're hearing it here right now. So this is good. This is not the first time these mysterious orbs have been seen captured on film here in Arizona, yet no explanation is given to the residents of our state. The phenomenon is being seen across America now, as reported in a new article. I'll give you all of this information right now into the chat room. You can take a look at it. I, for one, know that several of our guests on our shows have also been filming these orbs in Washington, D.C., Washington State, New Orleans, Florida. So, correct. These are being filmed all over the United States. The same type of orbs. And but the one that happened here on the 7th, that's a big one. You know, when 30 to 40 orbs at one time, that's quite interesting. Be careful with the weather of your Thanksgiving holiday. I'll give you some little bit of information on that if you're not into what's going on with the weather across the United States. Thanksgiving travelers scrambled to book earlier flights today to avoid a sprawling storm bearing down on the East Coast with a messy mix of snow, rain, and wind threatened to snarl one of the busiest travel days of the year and ground giant balloon versions of Snoopy and SpongeBob SquarePants in the Macy's parade. I'm sorry, that makes me want to laugh, but anyway. Grounded Snoopy and SpongeBob. Current forecast call for sustained winds of 20 miles an hour. Doesn't sound like much. Gusts 36 miles per hour. But I think it's the freezing temperatures, the snow, and the slush that's impacting the airports. Heavy rain and high winds would impact travel by air and road in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic and could have ripple effects on the airports departing and originating flights elsewhere. Heavy rain and breezy conditions were in the forecast Wednesday from the Carolinas to the Northeast, and ice and snow as possible in the Appalachians, western Pennsylvania, and western New York. Let's see, how many? 2.42 million passengers are traveling for Thanksgiving. So it's the second busiest day of the year as far as travel goes. So just be careful out there. I'll give you a heads up here on the report, and you can also log in this report and get updates of the weather as well. And Thomas will drop that into the chat room for us. I appreciate that, Thomas. So, and one more before I bring on my guest, and this quite interesting. And, you know, this is on a good note. So I want to share it with you. A cat missing from Biloxi was found more than 1,000 miles away in Colorado. Now get this. The person who owned him said he had him microchipped. And this is a part of the story. You know, you can read through the rest of it, but I'm getting to the point. It was very interesting. The whole story sort of rounded up into this whole microchipping thing. So the kitty was lost for 2 years, mind you, ended up 1,000 miles away in Colorado, Denver, Colorado. And because of the microchip, somebody brought it in. It was scanned. They called the owner's mother, who lived in 1,000 miles away from the son, who the mother called the son and said, "We've got your kitty here." And it was his kitty. And what are the chances of it surviving 2 whole years out there. And then how did they get 1,000 miles away? Regardless, I don't know that part of the story, but they went on, and this is the Humane Society, to go on and say the importance of chipping your pets, the importance of getting them microchipped, and that is the only way that this cat could have made it back home. I love the idea that the cat made it back to his original owner. I think that's fabulous. I also, if you intend to do something like that, it's not often I see a story like this. In other words, that just go on and on and on about the microchipping. I know a lot of you are very concerned about the Obama care or the healthcare bill that also has some requirements of chipping. So keep an eye on this kind of stuff. Keep an eye on the news with this kind of stuff, because I think they're sort of seeding the public, if you will, on getting us all sort of used to the idea that chipping is a good thing, and look at how, this kitty was lost for 2 years. But they're going to start talking about children and lost children, missing children, and, oh, look, the child was microchipped, and, we found the child because of the microchip, et cetera, et cetera. You all know what they're doing. It's another breach of privacy, and who needs that? So if anything, keep an eye on these types of stories if you can, and don't let them get the best of you, because you can refuse those tips. Of course, you can refuse the medical insurance. You can refuse to pay taxes, I suppose, and you can refuse to vote. Personally, I'm on that front line right now. So if I end up in jail or disappeared, you know where to find me. All right, my guest this evening, this is a very serious situation. It's reminiscent of another gentleman who's out in New Orleans, David Andrew Christensen, who's also fighting the good fight against the government, the one that I call the cabal. Her name is Kelly Miller. Kelly Miller files a lawsuit, case number 12-M-00319. FBI investigation is on it, and the fight for justice against Masonic domination. Miss Miller is a surviving victim of an unified Masonic domination, to which Miss Miller was able to identify corruption at a state level in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. With the governor's office and Kentucky State Police acknowledging the corruption and encouraging Miss Miller to take her case to the federal level, Miss Miller reported her evidence to the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Washington, which is currently being investigated by the FBI as well as with the U.S. Postal Inspector for Fraud. Miss Miller single-handedly developed and established a United States Supreme Court civil case with criminal exhibits for official court documents implementing chief political figures as committing fraudulent acts, ultimately resulting in Miss Miller's filing impeachment memorial with the House and Senate on Kentucky Attorney General Jack Conway for participation in an organized criminal syndicate under the United States RICO Act. That's RICO, for any of you who are familiar. Ms. Miller has vast knowledge in administration as a liaison to the National Job Corps organization mandated by the Department of Labor, where Ms. Miller developed and provided in-house and community preparation for the region, a work-based learning program, and a current college program. Both currently utilized. Ms. Miller has extensive experience speaking publicly in the political, business, and community arenas as a cultural ambassador of the Job Corps organization. Ms. Miller received her undergraduate degree from Morehead State University, as well as master's in adult education and a master's in counseling, and is a certified counselor. In 2002, Kelly Miller was honored by the lieutenant governor as a Kentucky colonel and an ambassador for Kentucky for her diligent work in the community. Ms. Miller is a Rotarian and past chairperson of Relay for Life Luminaries. In 1998, she was recognized by her community in a Salute to the Working Woman tribute article for her triumph over adversity and steadfast dedication. So this is a pillar in society. Kelly Miller is a pillar of society. What has happened to her is unspeakable, and we're going to talk about it. Kelly, welcome to the show, and I want to thank you firstly for taking the time while you're up there in D.C. right now to be on this program this evening. And I also want to thank you for the courage in which what you have walked through, which no man should have to gone through what you have gone through. I am so sorry for the brutality that has happened to you, the stalking, the harassment, and the conspiracy that has been built up against you, and the violent crimes that have been put on you and your family. As we had spoken today, Kelly, why don't we start with where this began, and so that the audience here can understand where we are right now. So let's just go back a little bit, and can you please tell me how this all started for you?
Good evening, Roxy. Thank you very much. It's been an experience, an adventure, I guess you might say. It's not been a very good adventure experience, but I've done the best I can with what I've got. And from what I can understand, and as far back as I can go, it began in 2002. I've been told that it began before then, and I'm sure it will all come out in the end of how far back it does actually go. The individual had placed cameras in my home illegally without my knowledge or permission, and was using me as a voyeurism participant. They had those cameras in there monitoring all my moves and forecasting me out on the internet. When the individual passed away and his widow found the information, she then proceeded to let this information out among the public in my area. People that I knew began seeing what people I didn't know had seen for years, and it kind of exploded from there. The gentleman that I was seeing at the time had informed me that this had been done, and he was an original participant of it. And after he got to know me, he kind of changed his mind a little bit and informed me what was going on. And it's kind of snowballed from there, because I decided to get my justice, and I didn't shirk away of embarrassment. I didn't run away. I didn't hide my head in shame. I decided to stand and fight. And
that's pretty odd. May I ask you a quick question? What was the motive, just while we're on that topic of your home was wired with cameras, what was the motive to film you? And I guess my other question was, were there cameras in your bedroom, and were there cameras in your bathroom?
As far as I know, there were cameras all through my home. The gentleman I was seeing had my vehicle for a week, and they installed a camera in my vehicle. I have had several people that I know personally who have told me what I'm doing and seen me, and called me and said they could see me and tell me what I was doing. I was in Lowe's when a person that I went to school with came up to me and said, hey, guess what? We're getting our own reality show too. And I said, I'm not participating in a reality show. They had decided when I found out, and it did get leaked to the community, they sold it as that it was a reality show that I was participating in order to get out of trouble of committing the crime. So they told everybody that I was actively participating and willingly participating, and it was like a big joke. And this is very much untrue. I had no knowledge of it. I did not sign any waivers. I did not agree to participate in anything of being filmed. It was just one of the multiple acts that they committed to try to cover their tracks.
Why were they spying on your home? Was there something they were concerned about, that they actually installed all these cameras in your car and your home to watch every move you were making?
The gentleman that owned the home that I was renting and I had been intimate and seeing each other. And evidently he was keeping an eye on me. He's into voyeurism. That's a known fact in the community that he had participated in that. And as far as I know, he was keeping an eye on me. I couldn't figure out how he knew everything I did, and evidently that's how it happened. And from my understanding of everything, when he passed, his widow found everything, and I guess out of vengeance or jealousy or whatever, proceeded to exhibit me out into the community that I currently lived in.
And then what happened next?
When I approached them about the cameras and asked for them to help me to remove the cameras and to have assistance, I was immediately and illegally given a eviction notice to leave my home. Before I was given the eviction notice, the person entered my home under the colors of the law and illegally without a court order or without informing me or anything, entered my home and removed said evidence. The cops that I talked to said it was a blatant move on their part to go into the home illegally.
Are you there?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know if you cut out or what. So, okay, so they obviously had a lot of recordings of you, breached your privacy in a big way, huge violation of privacy, keeping an eye on you for whatever reasons, this person, and then went public with it and then claimed that it was just a reality show type of thing, and removed all, like you said, evidence from the property, now evicted you. What was next?
Well, several things happened to me. They illegally arrested me multiple times to scare me and intimidate me. And the first time when it happened, they didn't process me in any form or manner that was correct with the law. It was just a complete chaos. And when I took the information to the Commonwealth Attorney, Anna Melvin, from my area, she immediately looked at it and said, "They're trying to railroad you, and if I was you, I wouldn't let them. You can shut the jail and the sheriff's office both down and have all their jobs." So when Ms. Melvin gave me that information, I proceeded to go from there to collecting evidence and walking through their hell that they created to stop me, collecting evidence and fighting my fight. And during the last 3 years now, they have kept me homeless, kept me without a job. The third time that they illegally arrested me, I was gang raped, and I was not allowed to report that because I was illegally arrested. And if I was to report that I had been gang raped, then they would have to justify why I was in jail. And of course, they couldn't do that because that would in turn promote the fact that they were guilty. They had proceeded to keep me involved in the court system where I had to walk from one county to across 3 counties. They made a game of it, filming me on my trip of what I would do and how I would do. Let me assure you, it is not a game when someone is purposely hurting you and forcing you to have to live a certain way and violating your rights and liberties as an American.
How far was that walk when you had to walk from one county to the 3 counties over and back? How far did you have to walk?
I think it was 80-some miles.
We're at the beginning of a story that is just as it unfolds. I've heard the story. Kelly's told me the story. As it unfolds, just prepare yourself for what this woman has been through. You know, she's currently working with political law enforcement, with political and law enforcement representatives toward securing justice, and she speaks publicly as an advocate against political corruption, sharing her story of the negative effect on victims, encouraging awareness of prevention of organized criminal syndicates to eliminate the possibility of any future sadistic Masonic domination occurring. And we were just at the part before we took the break, Kelly, where we were talking about you having to, at one point in the beginning of this, shuffle yourself back and forth between 3 counties, some 80 miles on foot. And then you were just about to bring up an attorney.
During the beginning of this, I was denied an attorney. They wanted to enhance the threat and intimidation of the law on me, that I would suffer incarceration for my criminal activities when I had done nothing. So their declaration of keeping me from an attorney was, to enhance that. So I've decided to start learning the law myself, to represent myself. And then they decided that I needed a lawyer because I was doing too good by myself. So when they tried to give me a lawyer, then it was too late, because I already knew the law, and they couldn't manipulate me by telling me I had to settle for this or I had to settle for that, because I knew what my rights were. I didn't use the internet to study. I went to the library to study out of real live books, information they could not manipulate. And knowledge is power. And you can't trust someone else, because people can be bought out and sold out. So it's better to inform yourself and keep yourself informed and on the knowledge, so that you know what your liberties and rights are and if they're being violated.
Agree. So continue the story. So now, and you had a very clever way of how you learned law. I thought it was excellent when you explained it to me. And so you did that, and then you represented yourself. And what else happened in the interim as you pushed the boundaries of these interesting groups of individuals, or group of individuals, I should say, that were really thinking that you were a slam dunk at first, that, they could just scare you, illegally arrest you, gang stalk you, or stalk you, gang rape you, commit violent crimes against your person, and you didn't stop. You got right back up and continued the advances for justice. Now what happened? Because it to me, it seems like at this point you would be it'd be like somebody poking a stick at a bee's nest at this point.
Yes, it is. They used my child against me in their crimes, and now I have to incarcerate my child with them, my only child, because they threatened and intimidated him, because he is a Mason, and he had to participate in order to stay in group. So the thing that he did was to state that I needed to have a psychotic evaluation. And anyone knows that if you have an evaluation, they come and pick you up and they take you to the facility, and in less than an hour you're evaluated, and you're either decided that there is an issue or that you're free to go. That's not what was done. They took me to a jail and had me arrested and processed and detained me in jail, which is illegal. While I was there, they processed me and said that I was perfectly sane. There was nothing wrong with me, that I was simply pissed off, which is understandable. My son threw a fit and continued to call and demand that they detain me in jail until they said that I was unstable. The psychologist came back the next morning to evaluate me again and informed me that my son and my father had control issues and would not leave me alone until I done what they asked. During the night, when I should have never been in the prison, is when I got gang raped.
Now, was this by inmates, or as far as you know, and we don't have to talk too much about this because this is very painful for you, but was it inmates or was it guards, or do you know? Can you identify your assailants is what I'm saying.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Has that become
because of the incident that happened, I have to punish my child, and they've taken my only child from me. And it's not a game. This isn't a fun game. It has severe repercussions on me. It's been trauma. It's been torture. The fact that I'm a counselor is what has helped me. Last year, I was told by one of the Masons that I had lasted longer than any of the others in this black ball. And quite frankly, that pissed me off, and I decided right then and there I was going to be the last. And I've worked very hard for others' rights. They tried to get me to sell out last year and settle, and they would give me money.
Tell us about that. Tell us about how that went. How amazing. When you told me this, I nearly fell off my chair. But what did they approach you at, and to keep your silence? And tell us, share with us. By the way, for you who are listening, I have documented evidence of this and court stuff. So this is all going to come out in the article that's associated with this show. So it's not like I just, been approached. Kelly has been, we've looked at everything. I've looked at everything in Kelly's background. So this isn't just somebody who called me one day and said, hey, can I come on your show? So Kelly, I just wanted the audience to know that, you have been definitely, you have provided us everything that we have needed. But let's talk about this time that you're very welcome. This time, the one so far time that they wanted to silence you with a whole lot of money. Tell us how that happened and who it was.
During all this, they've kept me very busy, and thank God I'm a multitasker. They kept me very busy with learning the law and defending myself in one case. And I've put the criminal activity that they done and the actual criminals together and tied them all together with their paper trail. And while I was living in my truck, penniless, I filed a lawsuit against a major corporation, U.S. Coal Corporation. I filed it against 4 entities for damages that I suffered at their hands of their little game. And I filed it in McGoffin County against U.S. Coal Corporation, John Collins, Licking River Resources and Licking River Mining, and the McGoffin County Sheriff's Department for their participation. This was in October of 2012. As anyone knows, when you file a lawsuit, if someone fails to appear or fails to respond, the person filing the lawsuit wins automatically.
Yes, it's called default.
It's called default judgment. Evidently, John Collins threw my complaint in the trash and didn't recognize me for who and what I am because I was penniless in my truck and didn't feel I was a threat. McGoffin County Sheriff's Office showed up with a representative from a law office that I used to work at, and that showed validation of the complaint, and they asked for an extension to prepare for it, and the judge allotted them an extension. After we finished our business with the McGoffin County and the judge allotted an extension for McGoffin County, I waited for the judge to grant me my default, which was the judge's responsibility. The judge failed to do her responsibility, Judge Kimberly Childers, and so I looked at her and asked for a default judgment. And she looked at me and said, I'm not here to teach you the law. And I looked back at her and I said, I didn't ask you to. I asked for my default judgment. And she said, we're not here to discuss that right now. So, needless to say, I'm currently fighting that right now. The governor's office that I met with for 5 weeks, I went down there in Frankfort and spent 5 weeks going to the Capitol every day and meeting with people, stated that, yes, I had won by default judgment, and yes, that money was mine rightfully. So I am working on that. I tied that case into, all 3 cases are all tied in. The same judge, Judge Susan Johnson from Johnson County, She got into this by doing my father a favor, an illegal favor, and she has signed her name on all 3 cases illegally on documents. In 2012, of September the 27th, when no one showed up to the case, by law, it was lack of warrant of prosecution and to be dismissed with prejudice, and they failed to do so. And because I knew my rights, they decided to bring in a large title that would scare me. I think, if anything, they should know by now that titles, positions, and money doesn't scare me.
And well, who was it?
And I respect it.
Who was it that they brought in?
They brought in Chief Justice of the Mountains judge, brought in a special prosecutor and a special judge, and they sent me to Perry County Court. And I never should have been there because the case should have ended. And Susan Johnson is responsible for doing that. So 3 times...
That's Judge Susan Johnson.
I'm sorry?
Was that Judge Susan Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I don't know if anybody knows this or not, but a conspiracy is considered 2 individuals. A organized criminal syndicate is considered 5 individuals. I have 7 judges, 3 county attorneys, 1 attorney general, and multiple police enforcement that I can tie physically with documentation into this one act against me. So, yes, it is a violation of the RICO Act. It is an organized criminal structure within the judicial system. I file under the Crime Victim Rights, Title 18 U.S.C., Section 3771, and they are failing to address that issue and provide protection and housing and shelter for me and funding. They're doing a lot of things against me. They're showing patterns of practice that they are not recognizing. They're depriving my rights under the color of law. I can go on, and I have in my documents, as you mentioned earlier, about the illegal crimes that they have committed. They've used the U.S. Mail Service to fraudulently send U.S. official mails. Each document that they sent me through the mail holds 20 years. So what they're doing by extending this is, in trying to break me, to make me sit down and shut up and give up, is they're adding to their crimes and the counts, and they're adding to their sentences in prison. And I try diligently, because I am a counselor, to work with these people and say, listen, I will give you, I'll give you an out, but you're going to have to acknowledge this happened. You're going to have to do community service. You're going to have to sign a diversion plan that I developed and create. And they refuse to do so. So as far as I'm concerned,
let me ask you something, Kelly. It's very interesting, and I want the listeners to catch what you just said. You weren't going after their throats, and you weren't going after their pocketbooks. You actually designed something that, if indeed this came to justice, your idea was justice and retribution wasn't a big check. It was for them to get involved in community service.
Yes. Part of my first motion and pleading that I sent for the John Collins case in McGoffin County was that they establish and build a law library, and that would be facilitated by Judge Kenny Prophet and under the direction of another judge to make sure that he didn't do anything illegal, which is what he done with me. But for him to take his knowledge and to use it in a positive manner, in a correct manner, and to facilitate it to other women who have been hurt and injustice. And for the facility to provide them with paper and pencils and things that they didn't allow me to have, simple little things. And I got to where, as I told you, I used the library. I didn't rely on the internet. I didn't use anything fancy. I used paper and pencil. And their main thing was, when they seen that I had the knowledge, was to keep me from having any money to where I could make copies to get my information out there. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm in D.C. now, is because I couldn't afford to mail the documents I needed to mail to the court. and, you have to send out 15 different copies and all these things. So, and I'm a mover and a shaker, Roxy, and I go toe to toe. I don't shirk my duties. If I'm responsible for something, I'm going to follow it through to the end. And if I've done something wrong, I'll take my punishment. And I guess because I'm a counselor, I tried to make it a win-win for everybody. But it seems that some people you can't give them a second chance and just barely slap them on the wrist. You have to punish them, evidently. And this needs to stop, and I'm tired of it. I'm not going to move on with my life and get a job and meet a man and move on. We're past that. That's not going to happen. They took too much from me. They hurt me too bad. I'm not the only person, and if I don't take a stand and make them be held accountable, the next person, I'm afraid, won't make it. And, of course, there will be a next person because they'll have to outdo what they've done with me. And I'm not going to have that.
No doubt. How did you...
human trafficking.
Is that right?
Yep. It's basic human trafficking. They segregated me. They had me living in my vehicle for 19 months. I mentioned earlier about the RICO Act, and 5 people is all it takes for the conspiracy of a organized criminal syndicate, which is punishable severely. And I have 67 Masons alone documented evidence of their participation in this. It is a Masonic organized criminal syndicate that has unleashed upon me. I was told that it would not quit until my father passed away. My father is a Mason and has been for multiple years, and evidently is very high-ranking. The fact is that they are in the justice system, and they hold the positions in society of judges, attorneys, and law enforcement, and so forth. The methods that they used on me were to threaten me with incarceration, that if I didn't do what they said and I didn't sit down and be quiet, that they would have me put away. That's brutal. They retaliated against me, the victim or an informant, and that's 5 years in prison right there under U.S. 18, Section 1513. I can name multiple violations. As I said, I can sit here and quote the law to you. They have followed me. I have another case where people have refused to show, because when I showed my evidence and I was allowed to show a little bit of my evidence, the other person decided they didn't want it because I could put them in prison, and they failed to show twice to a hearing, and the referee continued and blatantly said that's not how we do things, when I reminded him that by law, when the other team didn't show up, that it was a done deal. Say you're playing baseball and the other team doesn't show up, it's automatic forfeit. You don't have to wait 2 hours before they say, okay, it's a forfeit. You got, 5-10 minutes or so before, and if they don't show up, that's it. Well, in this latest case, while I'm here in D.C., they have followed me here to D.C. with these fake, bogus charade of hearings and used the employment office under the guise of Jack Conway. I have multiple documentation of Jack Conway's participation in this. I have the governor's office stating...
I'm sorry, who's Jack Conway again?
Jack Conway is the Attorney General of Kentucky.
That's what I thought.
I have audio tape of the governor's office sitting down with me, his constituents, and stating that Jack Conway has committed multiple crimes against me and to take it to federal level. I have the lieutenant commander of the KSP stating the same thing, that Jack Conway and the rest of them have committed federal felony crimes against me and to take it to the FBI. I was asked when I first went to Frankfurt and I started talking to the people who were over the housing, were they out in direct retaliation. On Friday, July the 19th, the judge held up the paper and read it top to bottom and stated that Commonwealth of Kentucky had committed crimes against me. And that paper that he held up was a document with a judge assigned and so forth for me to go to Perry County Court. That is one of the main evidences that is against Jack, because the judge that signed that, Judge John Milton, is associated with Jack Conway. Jack Conway's office, I have 3 documents from his office that also lead up to that I have to have special judges and special prosecutors after the fact of when the case should have, by law, been over. The fact that I was kicked out of my home, I received the phone call the Monday after the judge stated in open court on Friday. The Kentucky Housing that Jack Conway sits on the board of directors of, Laurent, stated they offered me a job to not sign. When I went to Frankfurt, I went to sign criminal complaint because you have to go to the county that they're in. And I went there to fill out my complaint and sign it, and was told that they would not process it. And I didn't expect them to, but I still had to go through the procedures of giving them the opportunity to do the right thing. And that's part of who I am. I believe in following the procedures and the steps, and you never know, somebody might step up and do the right thing, but you got to give them an opportunity. You can't go straight to the top. You got to work your way there. I'm a businesswoman. I mean business. I'm not just ranting and raving. I'm not just jumping up here and saying I need you to do something where they can knock me back down. There's no going back down. I've been through all the steps and procedures that I am supposed to go through by law.
So when they told you, Kelly, when they told you that you couldn't file the documentation, did they mean you didn't have to as part of it, or were they actually telling you, go ahead, go to the county and file it, we're not going to put it through the court system? Which one were they telling you?
That's the funny thing. These men are very arrogant and very ignorant. By law, doing something twice means that's a behavior. That is your how you handle. It's a pattern and practice. Title 42 U.S.C. Section 14.14.1. It's the way that you handle business. It's the way. It's a known fact. And by law, if you do it twice, then that means that is known as you. And what they done was every time I would go to file on anyone and I would have my evidence, they would refuse. And they were so cocky and full of themselves that. What
are you talking about? Like at the courthouse when you're going to file, and they just would say, basically you filled out everything correctly on their court dockets, and I'm very familiar with this process. By the way, I've done it myself several times. And so you went in there and you got everything stamped. You did all the stuff that you were supposed to do, and you hand it to, I guess, a county clerk. I'm imagining a clerk at the courthouse, and that clerk is telling you they're not going to accept it.
No, I went to the county attorney's office is where we had to file it. And not only did they do that, but they put in writing that they would not file it.
Oh.
And I had attached
what was their reason?
Court records.
What was their reason?
This last one said that I had no evidence, but his secretary stamped that she received the evidence. She stamped on top of it. So they were trying to intimidate and threaten me to get me to lay down by saying, we're not going to process you. And that's exactly what I wanted them to do, because I knew they wasn't going to in the first place. A little funny thing that happened was while I was trying to fill it out, he came out there, the assistant county attorney in Franklin County, and said, he was being a little smart aleck, and we're not going to process. I've read all your stuff, and we're not going to process. I said, if you don't mind, I'm in the middle of filling this out. If you let me finish filling these out, then I'll talk to you. And he just kept talking and kept talking, and I looked at him, and I said, I know you're not going to process these. I said, I'm filing impeachment on Zach. And he made his lips go together and said, oh. And he turned around and walked in his office, and about 5 minutes later he came back out, and he said, Miss Miller, we're going to go to lunch. Is there anything that you need, anything we can do for you? You need any copies or anything? I said, no, I'm fine. You see, they didn't realize, they thought their little intimidation of we're not going to do would work. But what they did was they created more evidence and more documentation that they're part of it.
Yeah, no matter what. And so did you end up, just for the record here, did you end up filing the impeachment memorial on Attorney General Jack Conway?
Yes, I did, and
Yeah.
I sent it to the whole House and the whole Senate, and I came down here straight to D.C. and reported the same to the Kentucky representatives. I was told that they tried to get out of being my representative as that I was, because I'm in D.C. and staying in D.C., that I'm not a Kentucky resident. Well, the law states that as far as being a Kentucky resident, I'm a Kentucky resident for a year. I have to have an absence of over a year before I'm a non-Kentucky resident. And, people travel on business all the time, and, they get their mail, and, they even work out of state. So, that's not going to work for me. They've tried every avenue they can to get out of giving me the services. Like I was talking earlier, Title 18 U.S.C. Section 3771, crime victim rights. When I make an accusation and file a complaint against, with the RICO Act against multiple political chief justices and so forth, they are supposed to, even during the process, even if there is no conviction, during the process, they are supposed to provide me a victim and a witness with shelter and with protection. And there's up to a $25,000 monetary amount of money to be used as I need during this process time.
So now, basically, they're supposed, if you're in a situation of hardship due to the crime that's been committed, therefore they owe you this while you're in the due process of court filings and court hearings. Is that correct? And that is that under the RICO Act? Is that what that is? Provided
it's under the U.S. Code for the Crime Victim Rights. There's multiple different things. There's a Violence Against Women Act, where I'm supposed to be getting that. There's a Victim and Witness Protection Act of 1982. There's 5 different acts that would protect me and provide housing and shelter and so forth for me. And none of these are the Witness Protection Program. These are just acts that are there and have funding to assist someone who is like me, who is being, as my own governor of my own state said,
let me ask
Commonwealth of Kentucky.
That's what I was just going to ask you, Kelly. Sorry. I was going to ask you, is this the crime victim right? Is that under Kentucky common law for Kentucky, or is that come back to the top of the hour? Those of you who might have missed and are tuning in a little bit late, missed the first hour, my guest, you can go ahead and go over to thetruthand.com and look at the schedule page at Kelly Miller and kind of catch up where we're at as far as what we've been discussing this first hour. I also just want to make a quick mention here one more time, as I did when I opened the show. Alternative radio has become a mainstream, or is slowly becoming a mainstream of information for the public. In order for us to stay on the air, in order for us to stay in the game, so to speak, we really need contributions from the listeners. And we have thousands and thousands, in the hundreds of thousands of the listeners who tune in daily to Revolution Radio. So I was going to thank all of you who have been contributing. Look, there are many ways you can contribute, by the way. The archives, you're talking 70-something shows, 70-plus radio shows, news shows, every 24 hours that are available to you on this network. And you can just, donate a few bucks and have access to all of those archives, so that you can go back. Maybe you're somebody who's a researcher and you need to get some information. All that information is right here on the site in the archives. The other way to do it, too, we have Christmas. That it's on the front page of freedomslips.com. For $100, what you get and all the instruction pamphlets and all that. Well, I have a sister who's a farmer, so I want to get that for her for Christmas. And so you can get that for others as well in your family, or those who have a little bit of a backyard or something like that like to grow this. Go take a look at it. Non-GMO, by the way, seeds and all the rest of it. You can't even buy this for $100, and that becomes the $100. You get this free with the donation. So with the holidays coming right around the corner, you might want to think about that as well. I'm not a good salesperson, people, so I'm talking about an area here of truth in the world today that they are squeezing us. Okay, we had a situation here. I'm not going to get into it, and I'm not going to name names because I haven't even asked the other hosts if I would be allowed to. But we're being gang stalked. There's a few of us being gang stalked here at Revolution Radio, and that's all I'm going to say about it. And I will say this: the person that is part of this ring, who is wanting to discredit a few of the hosts, including myself, he has been on my case for over 2 years. And I thought I got rid of him until some other host came to me to tell me what he has upped his game and escalated to. This person is not only a complete freaking lowlife, as what Kelly Miller is describing here. He's connected to a few other people. And what he's doing, we can't even begin to press charges against this guy. This guy who's been stalking me and what's the word? I don't even know what the word for it is. Discrediting me, but slandering me. I didn't even know this for the past year because I cut him off of everything, my phone, my emails. Come to find out he's showing up in other circles. He showed up at one of our wonderful, I'm not going to name her either, but one of our hosts right here on Revolution Radio's home. So bear with us. What we do here on the front lines, we got a lot of stuff going on in the background that you listeners don't even know anything about. And that's okay because we come here to deliver the news. That's what we come here to do. But know this, we need you. We need your alliance. We need your friendship, your fellowship, and we need help supporting this station. So just like with Kelly here, and Kelly, I could almost cry because when you and I talked today, you started to cry. I almost started to cry too because you're a strong woman like I am. Kelly, Kelly needs people to stand with her as well. Kelly, you're out there they have gotten rid of every person that was ever next to you, including your family, and you're out in D.C. Doing this, filing all this stuff with the FBI now. Got a FBI case going now, and you're doing this all by yourself.
Well, like I told you earlier, when last year they told me that I've lasted longer than any of the others. A staff officer says you got to do what makes you be able to lay down at night, and I can't lay down at night knowing that they're going to continue this behavior. It's unacceptable. It's inappropriate. It's sadistic, heinous, and it's not civil. It's criminal. And Kentucky Senator Rand Paul has Resolution 25 going. The constitutional amendment holds government officials to the same standard as American people. Part of the Constitution says Congress shall make the law applicable to a citizen of the U.S. that is not equally applicable to Congress. Just law is binding on everyone, applied equally on everyone. And, we need to stand up, and the people that are supporting Senator Paul, they need to stand up and support me. Yes, some of the people and their constituents may end up going to prison, but they had the same choice, and they made a wrong choice and committed a crime. Last Thanksgiving, I was sitting in my truck in a parking lot because that was where I was living. And it was cold. At one point in January, it was 12 degrees. And I couldn't start my truck up and be warm because I didn't have gas. And at 12 degrees, go sit in your car and just sit out there with just a blanket and see if you don't cuss and cry until you fall asleep. Because you don't know if you're going to wake back up. This Thanksgiving, I'm in a homeless shelter in D.C. Enough's enough. These people have celebrated with their children and their families and dismissed me as if I have no value, and all the people before me have no values because these people have status politically and monetarily. As I told you before, title, money means nothing to me. You can't respect it. It's the person you have to respect. You've got to have some principles. You've got to stand for something. And using your authority and using your contacts illegally to hurt others just to keep yourself from being in trouble instead of having enough balls about you to go toe-to-toe with somebody and try to fix what you've done wrong. I don't even know the word for it. But I do not deserve to have to live this way. And I'm not going to stand for it, and I'm not going to stand for anybody else having to live this way because people are being abused. What happened was my father asked one judge to do a favor, and it turned around, and I knew enough to know that what they done was illegal, and I'm holding them accountable. So everybody started jumping in and having their own opinions on what I should or shouldn't do and voting on how my life should be. And it's not their business on what life I choose or who I choose to love or who I choose to be with. They're not accredited to being my moral adjudicator. You know, what's right for them, it's not right for me. That's why we have a United States of America. We're independent of each other. We're supposed to have freedoms and rights to be able to experience and exist separately as well as, you know, together. It's our independent status. And when I lose my battle, I'm not just losing my battle for me. I'm losing it for all the people who fought it and didn't have the courage or the ability to be able to come as far as I have. I'm losing it for all those after me that are going to get hurt 10 times worse than I did, because everyone knows when a bully stands up and whoops on you and gets away with it, they have to make it a bigger show out of the next person.
Right, and
it's vital that people stand up.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back to these three cases, Kelly, and continue to educate the public on this. And again, if you're just tuning in, you know, we were talking about a woman who's been fighting the good fight for 3 years. She's is a surviving victim of a unified Masonic domination to which she was able to identify corruption at a state level in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And if you want to see the rest of that, I can give you a link in the chat room, and you can just click on it and go ahead and read the rest of what we are been talking about here for the last hour plus. And the other thing I wanted to go back to is that default judgment. You know, you won a large sum of money by default, and yet you were never paid it. Is that correct in Kentucky?
That's correct.
See, they just keep digging a hole. These people just keep digging a hole. They keep getting the hole just keeps getting deeper and deeper. Now, tell me also, again, you know, you were gainfully employed. You had a home. I mean, your whole life, they've really literally taken the whole right because you were standing up against the corruption, period. And then while we were on the break, you know, I just wanted to reiterate to anybody who might be having this problem out there too, at all. We talked about, it's called the Crime Victim Compensation Program. Is that correct, Kelly?
Yes.
Okay. That's you know, I didn't get the answer. Is it national? Is that a national program, or is that just a Kentucky program?
It's within the Commonwealth of Kentucky. It's actually a national, and the United States initially comes up with the funding and the support, and they are reimbursed by the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Okay.
And let's see. So in your particular case, what we're sort of looking at as well, maximum payment to you would be $25,000. This is during the process of your filing these lawsuits or these, you know, trying to get justice out of this. So all of this is supposed to happen during the process, including, you know, food, housing, and protection. And you haven't been provided with any of this under the law, correct?
Correct. I'm currently staying in a homeless shelter.
Okay. And then you're also, again, you're in Washington, D.C. You're staying in a homeless shelter in Washington, D.C. You're dealing straight up with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. And you said they're sort of dragging their feet on getting this compensation for you, or are they dragging their feet about something different?
Well, they're basically dragging their feet on the whole thing. I'm going to go ahead and take it on the head. I do have in writing from one of the agents that I had been emailing back and forth, that emailed me back and told me that he had sent it above his level to the next level. So it is being investigated. They have acknowledged that it does have credibility. that there is an issue and they have moved it on up the chain of command. Unfortunately, they're taking a lot of time that could have already put some action in it, because I pretty well put the whole case together for them. There's nothing left for them to really put together except what they're continuing to do to me like they did last week. But the only thing that I can assume that they're doing is letting everybody else have a nice little holiday while I stay over here in hell.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. Now, Kelly, what I want to know next is again, you're not letting go. You're like a pit bull with this case. You're not going to let it go. There's a lot of corruption involved. There's a ring of corruption involved. You're not going to let it go. I know a few others who are in the same sort of boat that you're in, so to speak, in different states who have taken on this type of thing going all the way to the top. And what you're finding when you're working at a state, a city level, then a county level, state level, and now a federal level, you're finding that the syndicate, the organized criminal syndicate, those who are involved in the cover-up and all of these cases, these 3 cases that are entwined, this is starting to go all the way up to the top, and it started in a small county, correct?
Yes. Well, actually, I kind of made the point to them last week. When I first came here, as I told you, I met with my senators and House of Representatives and so forth of Kentucky and other constituents. And the organization was the Commonwealth of Kentucky Employment Office, is where I had a hearing telephonic last week, and they had sent an illegal document to Senator Rand Paul's office. So now Senator Rand Paul is involved in this. Not too sure how his daddy over there in Texas is going to feel about that. So Senator Rand Paul is now going to have to take a stand. And I'm not going to sit down quietly, and I'm not going to be shushed away. Senator Mitch McConnell, who's also of Kentucky, is going to have to take a stand. I have documents that I have sent them. By law, they are held accountable. As I read that to you earlier, that Senator Rand Paul is pushing, that Congress make no law, that just law is binding on everyone. They're going to have to stand up with what they're preaching. This little girl's not going to lay down.
And are they going to be called into this hearing at some point, all of these individuals? Are they going to have to take when you're saying take a stand, are you mean literally in court?
Well, I'm sure if it goes that far, they will, because it's evidence that they received falsified documentation.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so, if it goes that far, then it goes that far.
Now, do they know, Kelly, do they know that what they have received is falsified documents?
Yes, they do. I've spoken at length with the secretary that received it. The emails verifying it. I kept them up to date on everything I'm doing down here, because I don't want them to say they don't know. And they have replied back. I've been told that if I go back to Kentucky that I'll have housing. They refuse to supply me with housing while I'm here.
Who told you that?
Senator Mitch McConnell's office said that the minute I get back into Kentucky to give them a call. Well, the reason they want me back into Kentucky is so that they can have, a better access to me to harass me. In Kentucky, they wouldn't even allow me in a homeless shelter.
Wait a minute.
So you're talking.
Hold on. Kelly, you're talking about so they can have physical access. And while you're in D.C., these guys over McConnell and all the rest, they don't have physical, and the police department and all the rest of these crooks, they don't have physical access. So you're actually safer in D.C., A, and B, it sounds like D.C. is not going to play the same games that Kentucky played on you. So at least,
Senator Paul and Senator Mitch McConnell are both here in D.C.
Right.
And they are, as I showed you and I pointed out, they are supposed to be providing me housing here in D.C. while I'm pursuing my justice. Yes. And they're refusing to, stating that they can only provide housing if I go back to Kentucky. Now, Kentucky sent me here because
they know you're not safe in Kentucky. This is retarded. They know that you're not safe.
They're passing the buck. And
I'll
be quiet.
I don't need to be in 12 degrees of weather to get mad. This is pissing me off now. Okay, so now what can be done about that? Because as you said, through the holidays, you're thinking that they're going to drag this all the way through Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, so they get to the other side. And then, of course, they've got to deal with the debt ceiling now, don't they? So in January. So in the meantime, in the interim of this, how often are you having talks or conversations, whether it be by phone or in person, with the FBI up in D.C.?
I am basically contacting them at least 4 or 5 times a week, giving them information and forwarding it on to them. They have stacks of information. I told them at one point I wasn't going to do their job for them. I didn't get paid for it. They are, it's very well documented that they have access to this. I've also informed them that because this happened in D.C., they're held accountable for this continued harassment. And I want put in this program. I want housing. I'm not safe in the D.C. Homeless shelter. I stick out like a sore thumb. I'm easy accessible if they wanted to send somebody down here. You know, I deserve to have my rights met by law. And, you know, I'm not going to say, I don't deserve to have to go through Thanksgiving and Christmas in these conditions when these other people are at home with their families enjoying their lives. These people need to be uprooted immediately. They need to be put in jail with no bail. By law, no bail, because they've already tried to evade prosecution. That means they get no bail. They don't qualify for bail because they're a flight risk.
Right. And to be clear, you're not talking about Senator Rand Paul at this point. You're talking about
I am not.
The individuals that we already referenced in the first hour. So if those of you who are listening, you'll have to get the archive of the show and listen to the first hour because we already named names. Now, bring me up to date on the 3 cases. First of all, that are intertwined. Bring me up to date of how do you establish getting a court hearing? I mean, are you trying to get a court hearing in D.C.? Because I'm a little bit confused as the FBI has a hold of all your evidence, yet shouldn't there be a court hearing established here in D.C. To get the criminal lawsuit filed?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get the FBI active on, is the federal lawsuit part of it and the criminal. I'm working toward doing that. I have the civil case here, and I'm trying to bring the criminal case here. I went to Kentucky, as I stated before, and tried to file charges at the state level and was denied that, so I'm trying to get to the federal level, and that's where I stand right now, is trying to take the case to the federal level.
Now, have you tried at all, Kelly? I'm just curious about this. Have you tried to hook up with any advocate groups that might be able to stand with you on this?
Well, I have been trying since I've been down here. I've been very busy. The first 3 weeks I spent working on my brief, and I've submitted that. As I mentioned, I'm living in the homeless shelter, so I have no funding whatsoever. I'm working on $0. I sold everything that I had to get the ticket to come here and to pay to have the paper printed so that I could submit it.
That's what I meant. An advocacy, yeah. some sort of organization. I'm sure there has to be one that can help you. You know what I mean? Help you with this, like get you shelter in the meantime, assist you. I don't mean a government program either. I'm talking about an activism type group, or that's an advocacy for people like you who have been harassed, to say the least.
Well, anyone that has any information, I would love to have it. I've contacted everybody that I know. I've tried to get with the media. I've actually talked with one reporter here. I'm doing everything I can to get this out. And when it does come out, it's going to come out like a storm. And there's going to be people jumping on top of each other to get up out of the water.
Now, we were talking earlier as well, like when I say this goes all the way to the top in government, I'm not kidding. How does Eric Holder play into this?
He is the United States Attorney General who is over over the Commonwealth Attorney General, Jack Conway, as far as.
Oh, really?
So I don't really want to talk a lot about that because,
right.
as you know,
okay,
they are
that's not a problem.
that. I have sent an email to the senators and to the FBI stating that I would be glad to speak with them about the information that I have so that they can use it in their case.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I'm sorry if I don't blame you. For not wanting to discuss that. The reason why I mention it because there's another case going on in New Orleans, same kind of situation where that's these attorney generals, local, and then going all the way up to Mr. Holder as well. So I was just curious about that. Now, as far as on a daily basis, I imagine like you said, you get a hold of the FBI about 4 times. Are they taking you seriously?
They were replying, yes.
Have you met with them in person?
Yes.
Okay. And so they're taking a look at your stuff and realizing it's obviously because something that you just said is kind of interesting that you gave a copy to Senator Rand Paul, and then the next thing you know, Kentucky senator is saying, "Well, if you want to come back, we can get you a housing and protection," which is the total opposite. But it's kind of this breaks my heart too because don't tell me that, and this is me saying this, not you, but don't tell me Senator Rand Paul doesn't know that you're not safe in Kentucky. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out.
No, it doesn't. But, I mean, I want to go home to Kentucky. I do not like it here in D.C. My roots are in Kentucky. I'm comfortable there. I don't have any family there, but, the thing that I'm not giving up, as we discussed earlier, is the gentleman that I was seeing at the time that this all blew up.
Again, our guest this evening is Kelly Miller. She's up in Washington, D.C. at the moment, and that's where she is broadcasting from. Kelly, so the man that you were with that decided that you didn't deserve this and decided to tell you what was going on back in the beginning. Let's talk about him now.
We saw each other for approximately 3 years. My father didn't like the relationship. They had said that I wasn't allowed to see him anymore. He had told me that the cameras were in the home.
Right.
His exact words. And he also told me that they were going to do what they did, how they put me in jail and done everything they done to me. He said that he couldn't stop it. He couldn't control it. He'd be back as soon as he could, he promised. And we did talk in between all this, and my father and his buddies had said that we weren't allowed to see each other for a year. And so then we ended up talking as part of an agreement to, that's the other thing. The reason that they were doing the employment thing was to try to coax me into believing that I had broken a law and that I was facing jail time so that I would trade my charges against them for their piddly little measly misdemeanor charade of charges against me. As you said, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. I mean, these counts, there's 3 counts that are 20 years each. USC 18, Section 1512, tampering with a witness or victim or an informant, 20 years. Trafficking with respect to peonage, slavery, involuntary servitude, or forced labor, which is 1590, 20 years. Sending documents through the U.S. Postal Service fraudulently, 20 years. We're talking a lifetime for these people that, when they get prosecuted. They're going to serve a long sentence in federal prison. So if you can think about it and grasp it that way, I don't feel that I need to compromise myself by, I don't know, giving credit to their charade, if you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
The this poor attempt, no other way to say it, this poor attempt at covering their ass. And I might not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm not the dullest either.
Well, like
We're not going to trade.
They said it to you, Kelly. They said no one's ever gotten this far. No one's lasted this long. I wouldn't have, I'll tell you that right now. I mean, if they took everything away from me and raped me and all the rest of it and kept arresting me illegally and throwing me in little jail cells and, just kept screwing with me and, I don't know how much I could take either. So yeah, they clearly recognize that you're, at the very least a force to be reckoned with. I do have one question. I asked it to you, when we were on the phone privately, and it crossed my mind, with not full-blown national attention yet for you. Are you afraid that they could just, sort of put you in a car and take you out to the middle of the desert and throw you in a big hole?
No.
Why won't they do that?
I'm not afraid.
Well, I'm saying, could they do that? Or would they do that? Or why haven't they done that? You got a lot of people on the hook right now.
Yes, I do, and that's exactly why. It's because it is so public, and so many people at high ranking. As I mentioned, I have on tape the governor's office of constituents stating, and acknowledging crimes. If something was to happen to me, where do you think they're going to look? They're going to look at every one of these people. If they make a martyr out of me, they're definitely going to prison for a long time. If they step up and do a toe-to-toe and deal with me on my terms, then they have a chance at mercy. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do, and I can appreciate your tenacity is the word I come up with, for just continuing to believe and put this together and keep moving forward. My only concern, and this isn't to taint your imagination or your creativity at all in this, but my only concern is that I've never seen those who have been, really up at the top and guilty. I mean, I've just never seen these types serve justice, serve their time for the crime. I've never seen it yet. I mean, and so that's my only concern, because when we're dealing with people at the top, they, you said it best, they're all covering each other's asses. And so at the end of the day, how do you get justice if they don't comply, if they just keep dragging this out as they have done for 3 years, and the FBI just never gets anywhere with it? You see what I'm saying? So I want to know that angle too. What if they just keep dragging this out and dragging this out and dragging this out? I mean, you're not going to live in a homeless shelter the rest of your life in D.C.
This is not a civil case to be dragged out. The lady who I'm taking to court, and I have now at the Supreme Court level, but I got there in less than 2 years of me not an attorney, which in itself is a miraculous event.
Okay.
She herself said, well, it'll be 10 years to get, no, darling, it doesn't take 10 years. This is criminal. It's not civil. The FBI has acknowledged the criminal activity. Are they going to sit on it after they have acknowledged it? Then they're going to be held accountable. Everyone is reported to someone else.
So somebody's going to have to throw somebody under the bus somewhere.
There you go.
Right? Okay, I get what you're saying. They're not all going to show up in line and go to jail and serve 25 years or whatever it is. But somebody on that side of the fence is going to have to give up a sacrificial lamb, so to speak.
And Jack Conway's it, because he put his name on everything. And just like the lieutenant commander said, when he directly retaliated against me, he could have blamed that on anything and anybody else before he done that. And when he direct retaliated against me under his official title, because he got his panties in the water and got scared and showed it, then he threw himself under the bus. And as I mentioned earlier, I do not believe Senator Rand Paul and his father are going to acknowledge that they're any participating of this. And I really like Senator Paul and what he stands for. And in the business aspect of it, I don't see, him ruining his career for a bunch of numbnuts. And he gets that, brought it on themselves.
This is definitely now as you continue to remind us of exactly how big this is, where it started with a few people and how it's grown. So basically what it is it's tag your it. Anybody that is exposed to the documentation of all of this is now in on it. I mean, as far as if they decide to look the other way, which they're not supposed to do. And by law, they shouldn't be looking the other way. But what you're saying is that, right, it's like stepping in mud. I'd prefer to use another word, but, for now we're on the air. So it's like stepping in mud and getting mud on your shoes and then walking in somebody's house. Now they have mud in their shoes, on their carpet,
Exactly. It's like having an elephant in your living room.
Yeah.
That elephant is going
at some point you can't make it go away.
Yeah. And I'm not going away, and there's 3 things that I'm going to get, and I'm not going to be quiet until I get them. I want my man Philip.
Okay. This is what I want to ask the public right now. Any one of you who are listening to the show and some of the hosts that do tune into this show, if you are familiar or know any advocate groups that are not working for the government or funded by the government that can help Kelly out. And I'm talking about in the interim, because she's done a really great job. You've done a great job, Kelly, of getting from point A to point B to point C, and et cetera. But if there are any advocate groups out here, especially in Washington, D.C., and you want to get in touch with Kelly, how does somebody get in touch with you at this point?
You can email me at equaljusticeforkellymiller.com. That's equaljustice4kellymiller.com. You can call me on my cell, 606-233-2165. Either of those will work, and I will be glad to get back in touch with you.
Okay. Sorry, you're cutting out. Thomas, is she cutting out on the end of the radio station?
She did a little bit.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was just me. Thank you. Kelly, I'll make sure to get that information out to the public as well. I just wanted to, anybody that was possibly listening or somebody who's going to listen to this show in the next, few weeks, few days, few hours, I just want to get make sure that the information's out there. So if there is anybody who can assist you, I want to see that happen. Now, this is incredible. Do you have any family members at all or any friends? Has everyone sort of stepped away from you in this?
Because I'm chosen to prosecute my father, it split the family, and I've lost my family because of it. Then at one point they decided, after my grandmother passed at the funeral, multiple of them told me that they supported me prosecuting my father, that he deserved to go to prison for what he had done to me. However, they didn't like the fact that I was prosecuting my son as well. And that's not up to them to decide, because they're not the ones that were hurt. It's their opinion. They're living their lives and living it, as they wish, with who they wish. And it's my justice. I'm the one that was hurt and still being hurt.
What's going to happen to the guy that was the one who opened the can of worms, like that told you that your house was surveyed, under surveillance, I should say? What's going to happen to him?
Well, he is part of the restitution, as far as I'm concerned. The things that they have done to me in the beginning of this, they sent multiple, as I said, Masons to me that I've got documented, that came to me, and they tried to transition me over from the voyeurism section of their little sex ring to escorting older gentlemen. And they thought that if I had $0, Judge Kenny Prophet said it in an open court that he wanted me down to $0. And he even made the statement in open court that it was legal for them to have a communication block on me. After he went and read my Facebook, he made the whole courtroom sit for an hour and a half while he went and read my Facebook in closed chambers, came back out and announced it to the courtroom that he'd been back there reading my Facebook, and that he didn't see anything inappropriate on it, and that, by the way, it wasn't illegal for them to have a communication block on me. Philip had also informed me that there had been a communication block on me for several months.
What does that mean? What does that mean, communication block?
They had been preventing people from contacting me and controlling who I talked to and when I talked to them, and intercepting my messages.
Okay, via Facebook, via emails, via private chats, etc. So, so you weren't getting the connection to people that were trying to reach out to you.
Yes, they were segregating me, isolating me. It's part of the torture to keep me from
isolating.
They used desocialization to the police, which is who you go to. Please go, if anything happens to you, go to the police. That is what they're there for. Unfortunately, there are some that are corrupt, but
Kelly, why did they pick you to start all this shenanigans nonsense with? I mean, prior to the cameras being uploaded into your dwelling, your house that you lived in, was life normal, or is this been going on all your life, but it escalated?
I'm not really sure. I can only tell you that from 2002, that's when I know that it began. And I don't think that I'm anything special or anyone special other than the fact that I'm a human being. I think I'm the one that found out. And I do know that there are others. I can prove that there are others that have cameras in their homes and do not know about it. I think I'm just the one that found out. I'm the one that fell in love with and told.
Kelly, you're starting to cut out a little bit. Are you losing cell coverage where you are?
Possibly. Is that better?
That's a little better. Yeah, you started going underwater, and I was trying to go after you.
Sorry about that. I have a tendency to put my thumb over the microphone.
That's okay, no problem. So what about Facebook right now? Are you able to get messages on Facebook now?
Yes, I do. When they cut it off, they illegally cut my Facebook off. They voted on it, and I was informed when I worked at the Super 8, which is one of the people's entities that I have the lawsuit against. I was informed by an employee of Super 8 that they were going to terminate my Facebook, and they did. Now, how this employee got this information is kind of interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is.
And so they
now,
shut
do you
it
have
down.
a Facebook again?
I got another Facebook. I had 1,200 people, and I was putting the information on there, and I was being threatened, and they even threatened me with the court that I had to be quiet and that I couldn't say anything on there. And, of course, we got freedom of speech and due process, and what I was doing was putting evidence on there that they weren't giving me my freedom of speech or due process, and they didn't like that. So they were threatening me, and when I didn't take to the threat, and I continued to post the information to try to get to outreach because they had cut me off, they completely cut the Facebook out. So I generated another Facebook and started all over.
Do you have any transportation anymore?
No. My vehicle is back home. I didn't have the money. If I would have liked to have had the money to have brought it here because I could be living in it. And I could have had my things, but I had to leave it back in Kentucky.
What's your next move, Kelly?
They also took, and the documentation that they provided me to scare and intimidate me, that I had a criminal record, that my background check came back with all these criminal records and everything. And the very first week I got here, the first thing I did was I went to the Capitol and I had a talk with an officer there. and he ran my license and came back with an okay clear, but there's nothing on my record. I had total access to, and this was during the shutdown. I went through the tunnels. I had access to the Senate building, the House of Representatives, the Capitol, and so forth, free access. There seems to be some issues with my background now coming through so that I can get a job. And there's evidence from back home where they stopped me and kept me from getting a job. And like I told you earlier, they wouldn't even allow me to be in a homeless shelter in Kentucky. And that was Jack Conway's doing.
They wouldn't even allow you to be in a... Oh, back up. They wouldn't allow you to be in a homeless...
I was not allowed, they said, to participate in their homeless program. And I had to sleep in the streets. And I slept in the YMCA garage parking lot there for a little while. And they kind of adapted me and kind of looked out for me a little bit. But that's where I slept the whole time I was there. And they thought that because I didn't have shelter that I would turn and go home. But I've not had shelter this whole time. And I have nothing to go home to. I have no home thanks to Jack Conway. I mean, they kicked me illegally out of my mobile home first, and I had gotten up and out of homelessness by getting in the apartment that Jack kicked me out of. But I should have never been kicked out of either one. It was both illegal, and that's how they tie together, because the way they done it was the same exact illegal mannerisms of evicting me without having the proper channels.
How many pages, in your opinion, are associated with these three cases that you're filing? How much evidence is stacked up against these individuals at this point?
I have over 200 court documented exhibits, not counting the exhibits and the documentation that I have that wasn't created for the court.
Gotcha. And
these are public records.
Mm-hmm.
These are public records that anyone can pull up.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. If somebody wants to go and see what I get to see, and they want to go and look at it, can you tell us where they would go to look this up?
Okay. Case number 12M00319, Breathitt District Court. That's one of the ones that they sent.
What's the name of the district court? I'm sorry. What's the name of the district court?
It's Breathitt District
Can you spell
Court
it?
In Kentucky. BREATTITT District Court.
Okay.
12M00319. That's the one that should have shut down on September the 27th of last year, and they continued harassing me, sending me to Perry County Court. Then there's multiple cases. There's the Court of Appeals, the Commonwealth of Kentucky Court of Appeals. There's the Circuit Court.
What's the website that somebody would go to look this stuff up? Because I'm going to put this out in the information in the article as well, Kelly, for people to look up themselves.
As far as a website, they would just go to the court cases. Is all I know of. Kentucky. I've got the Commonwealth of Kentucky Court of Appeals, 2013-CA-00.
Oh, you can look it up by these numbers. Sorry.
Yeah.
You can look it up by these numbers. That's right. You don't even need a website link. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. 2013-CA-001013 is one of the cases. I can send you a link that'll have all of the cases.
Yes,
because
that's a good idea. And for people who are listening right now, if they just want to check it out, that one with the Breathitt District Court, that's 12M as in Mary 00319, right?
Yes, that's the one that Attorney Jack Conway participated in.
Okay.
And
Attorney General. Okay. And so people can get a start on it by going there. And then, so I'll have the rest of them available for the public as well. I do for other cases that are going on right now across the country as well. We've got roughly a minute left, Kelly. What, if anything, can you tell the public what you need or what you want, and run that phone number again for us? Your phone number.
My phone number is 606-233-2165. I want three things that I've wanted from the beginning. I want my man Philip, I want my money, and I want my justice. And I'm not giving any of it up.
So you want your relationship back with Philip. You want the money
He put a wedding band on my finger before he left, and I want him to come back and honor it.
Are you there, Roxy?
Yeah, I'm here. She faded out. Can you hear Kelly?
Yes.
Sorry, Kelly, you disappeared on me. So all of a sudden you were gone. So he put a ring on your finger. That's the last thing I heard you say. Forgive me. But you want your relationship with Phil back. You obviously you want to proceed and get married. You want the money that is owed you in all of these cases, that even something you already won by default judgment, they haven't even paid you. And you want justice. And to be very clear, Kelly, you have a whole program set up that with all these individuals that you have named in these cases, you all you want from them, the retribution that you're asking for isn't money from them. The retribution you're asking is to set up like a as you said, like a library, I believe in Kentucky, for law, so that people can, right?
In one of them, I requested that they set up a law library for indigent individuals such as myself and victims. I asked for a homeless program. I asked for an abuse shelter. I have people that I want to run it. I have people that I want to service in it. And I think these people need to give back to the community. And mainly, they need to acknowledge that they've done something wrong, and they need to give back to the community.
Yes. Understood. So you're not, this is really a big thing. And again, if people want to call Kelly and speak to her, she's out there in Washington, D.C. right now. That's 606-233-2165. Kelly, I really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you for everything that you've done and everything that you've done for the public. I can't thank you enough for your honesty, your diligence, your resilience, and you're a woman with a mission, and you're not going to give up. And I'd like to see if there's any for Kentucky for her diligent work in the community. Ms. Miller is a Rotarian and past chairperson of Relay for Life Luminaries. In 1998, she was recognized by her community in a Salute to the Working Woman tribute article for her triumph over adversity and steadfast dedication. So this is a pillar in society. Kelly Miller is a pillar of society. What has happened to her is unspeakable. And we're going to talk about it. Kelly, welcome to the show. And I want to thank you firstly for taking the time while you're up there in D.C. right now to be on this program this evening. And I also want to thank you for the courage in which what you have walked through, which no man should have to gone through what you have gone through. I am so sorry for the brutality that has happened to you, the stalking, the harassment, and the conspiracy that has been built up against you, and the violent crimes that have been put on you and your family. As we had spoken today, Kelly, why don't we start with where this began, and so that the audience here can understand where we are right now. So let's just go back a little bit, and can you please tell me how this all started for you?
Good evening, Roxy. Thank you very much. It's been an experience, an adventure, I guess you might say. It's not been a very good adventure experience, but I've done the best I can with what I've got. And from what I can understand, and as far back as I can go, it began in 2002. I've been told that it began before then, and I'm sure it will all come out in the end of how far back it does actually go. The individual had placed cameras in my home illegally without my knowledge or permission, and was using me as a voyeurism participant. They had those cameras in there monitoring all my moves and forecasting me out on the internet. When the individual passed away and his widow found the information, she then proceeded to let this information out among the public in my area. People that I knew began seeing what people I didn't know had seen for years, and it kind of exploded from there. The gentleman that I was seeing at the time had informed me that this had been done, and he was an original participant of it. And after he got to know me, he kind of changed his mind a little bit and informed me what was going on. And it's kind of snowballed from there because I decided to get my justice, and I didn't shirk away of embarrassment. I didn't run away. I didn't hide my head.
Concerned about the Obama care or the healthcare bill that also has some requirements of chipping. So keep an eye on this kind of stuff. Keep an eye on the news with this kind of stuff, because I think they're sort of seeding the public, if you will, on getting us all sort of used to, the idea that chipping is a good thing, and look at how, this kitty was lost for 2 years. But they're going to start talking about children and lost children, missing children, and, oh, look, the child was microchipped, and, we found the child because of the microchip, et cetera, et cetera. You all know what they're doing. It's another breach of privacy, and who needs that? So if anything, keep an eye on these types of stories if you can, and don't let them get the best of you, because you can refuse those tips. Of course, you can refuse the medical insurance. You can refuse to pay taxes, I suppose, and you can refuse to vote. Personally, I'm on that front line right now. So if I end up in jail or disappeared, you know where to find me. All right, my guest this evening, there's a very serious situation. It's reminiscent of another gentleman who's out in New Orleans, David Andrew Christensen, who's also fighting the good fight against the government, the one that I call the cabal. Her name is Kelly Miller. Kelly Miller files a lawsuit, case number 12-M-00319. FBI investigation is on it, and the fight for justice against Masonic domination. Miss Miller is a surviving victim of an unified Masonic domination, to which Miss Miller was able to identify corruption at a state level in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. With the governor's office and Kentucky State Police acknowledging the corruption and encouraging Miss Miller to take her case to the federal level, Miss Miller reported her evidence to the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Washington, which is currently being investigated by the FBI as well as with the U.S. Postal Inspector for Fraud. Miss Miller single-handedly developed and established a United States Supreme Court civil case with criminal exhibits for official court documents implementing chief political figures as committing fraudulent acts, ultimately resulting in Miss Miller's filing impeachment memorial with the House and Senate on Kentucky Attorney General Jack Conway for participation in an organized criminal syndicate under the United States RICO Act. That's RICO, for any of you who are familiar. Ms. Miller has vast knowledge in administration as a liaison to the National Job Corps organization mandated by the Department of Labor, where Ms. Miller developed and provided in-house and community preparation for the region, a work-based learning program, and a current college program. Both currently utilized. Ms. Miller has extensive experience speaking publicly in the political, business, and community arenas as a cultural ambassador of the Job Corps organization. Ms. Miller received her undergraduate degree from Morehead State University, as well as master's in adult education and a master's in counseling, and is a certified counselor. In 2002, Kelly Miller was honored by the lieutenant governor as a Kentucky colonel, and an ambassador. Several of our guests on our shows have also been filming these orbs in Washington, D.C., Washington State, New Orleans, Florida. So, correct. These are being filmed all over the United States. The same type of orbs. And but the one that happened here on the 7th, that's a big one. You know, when 30 to 40 orbs at one time, that's quite interesting. Be careful with the weather of your Thanksgiving holiday. I'll give you a little bit of information on that if you're not into what's going on with the weather across the United States. Thanksgiving travelers scrambled to book earlier flights today to avoid a sprawling storm bearing down on the East Coast with a messy mix of snow, rain, and wind threatened to snarl one of the busiest travel days of the year and ground giant balloon versions of Snoopy and SpongeBob SquarePants in the Macy's parade. I'm sorry, that makes me want to laugh, but anyway. Grounded Snoopy and SpongeBob. Current forecasts call for sustained winds of 20 miles an hour. Doesn't sound like much. Gusts 36 miles per hour. But I think it's the freezing temperatures, the snow, and the slush that's impacting the airports. Heavy rain and high winds would impact travel by air and road in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic and could have ripple effects on the airports departing and originating flights elsewhere. Heavy rain and breezy conditions were in the forecast Wednesday from the Carolinas to the Northeast, and ice and snow as possible in the Appalachians, western Pennsylvania, and western New York. Let's see, how many? 2.42 million passengers are traveling for Thanksgiving. So it's the second busiest day of the year as far as travel goes. So just be careful out there. I'll give you a heads up here on the report, and you can also log in this report and get updates of the weather as well. And Thomas will drop that into the chat room for us. I appreciate that, Thomas. So, and one more before I bring on my guest, and this quite interesting. And, you know, this is on a good note. So I want to share it with you. A cat missing from Biloxi was found more than 1,000 miles away in Colorado. Now get this. The person who owned him said he had him microchipped. And this is a part of the story. You know, you can read through the rest of it, but I'm getting to the point. It was very interesting. The whole story sort of rounded up into this whole microchipping thing. So the kitty was lost for 2 years, mind you, ended up 1,000 miles away in Colorado, Denver, Colorado. And because of the microchip, somebody brought it in. It was scanned. They called the owner's mother, who lived in 1,000 miles away from the son, who the mother called the son and said, "We've got your kitty here." And it was his kitty. And what are the chances of it surviving, 2 whole years out there? And then how did it get 1,000 miles away? Regardless, I don't know that part of the story, but they went on, and this is the Humane Society, to go on and on to say the importance of chipping your pets, the importance of getting them microchipped, and that is the only way that this cat could have made it back home. I love the idea that the cat made it back to his original owner. I think that's fabulous. I also, if you intend to do something like that, it's not often I see a story like this. In other words, that just go on and on and on about the microchipping. I know a lot of you are very, and I appreciate you. We tend to, during the show, drop links in for you. You can bookmark them and read them later, or read them during the show, or even discuss them. So if you're just listening to the show right now on a player somewhere, like on the Truth Tonight website, etc., you want to go to freedomslips.com and click Studio A, and you'll have a player there and hear the show live, and join the chat room. I highly recommend it. A lot of really interesting conversations go on in the chat room these days. On the site of UFOs in Arizona, and I'll give you the link right now. As a matter of fact, it's really interesting. This is current news today. And I find this one quite fascinating. UFOs have been in the news quite often lately. Let's see, Before It's News reported the story, and it read, "This is not just a UFO sighting. This is a mass of UFOs in the sky over Chandler, Arizona," which, by the way, is about 30 miles north of me. This took place on November 7th, so last week, captured on film with more than one witness. some forming triangles, and some just out there with the video creator counting over 20 of these objects, and then more coming in as they're watching these 20 objects piling in. Some of them even recorded 30 to 40 of them at a time, objects in the sky. According to the details and what is said on the video, as this unbelievable sighting was happening, a military helicopter also showed up on the scene on the 7th. They just kept coming in. If this many unidentified orb-like objects are coming and going at will, then it could be said that we have already been invaded, which begs the question of why this isn't being shown on every single news station throughout the country. You've got to ask why. By the way, I'm going to interject here for a moment, which is why it is very, very important that all of the alternative media that is out there, including myself, Revolution Radio, etc., is very, very important to you. A lot of you have already made that choice in your lives over the past few years. You have realized that going through the alternative networks for your articles, for your news stations and breaking news, etc., and radio shows like this, you have found that the information that you gather on alternative media is much heftier and the other side of the coin of the story that mainstream media is telling. In this particular case, this story wasn't even reported on mainstream. You want to tell me why here in Arizona on November 7th, I, who live in the state 30 miles south of Chandler, never heard a peep about 40 craft in the sky? But it gets better. According to the details, as I said, on the video, this unbelievable sighting was happening as the military helicopter shows up to the scene, which is that you know that's trouble when the military shows up. They just kept coming in, and if this was unidentified orb-like objects are coming and going at will, again, why isn't this on every news station throughout the country? Well, you're hearing it here right now. So this is good. This is not the first time these mysterious orbs have been seen captured on film here in Arizona, yet no explanation is given to the residents of our state. The phenomenon is being seen across America, now as reported in a new article. I'll give you all of this information right now into the chat room. You can take a look at it. I, for one, know that
Revolution Radio proudly presents live from Phoenix, Arizona, the Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here for topics you won't hear about on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, nutrition, and conspiracy facts regarding your personal sovereignty. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
After a few of the news reports that I always do at the top of the hour, we will bring on the guest. This is going to be a very interesting discussion. I spoke with my guest today for a couple of hours, and I want you all to know it's a very, you really need to pay attention to this one, what is happening in the background, and the stance that she has taken in the courts. So we will get to her in a moment. In the news, Obamacare creates 50 state databases with no function beyond gathering potential voter information. This came out earlier today, about 1 o'clock this afternoon. Since the passage of Obamacare, all 50 state Medicaid agencies have been forced to create a new standalone database that contains nothing besides the contact information of Medicaid applicants who used the healthcare.gov website. Some of these new databases mail out voter registration forms automatically, and you cannot refuse them. No worthwhile verification occurs before the forms are mailed. Apply for Medicaid, and the form will be mailed to you. You will be verified citizen on a computer, period. That's it, because you filled out information there. Further, these new databases are accessible by groups like Organizing for Action, that's the name of a group, the reconstituted acorn, and malevolent figures like Chris Tarango. These are industries that are going to also have those databases. I'm imagining they probably made arrangements with the government, paid for that data. So I don't know what to tell you. I think it's just another level of, breaching our privacy and using the Obamacare website or healthcare.gov. I'm sorry, it's not called Obamacare. Healthcare.gov website as basically a way to collect all the data of American citizens. Just one more way. Sorry to give you the bad news. I don't know if you heard this or not. You might not be hearing it on mainstream news. I'll give you a link in the chat room. And those of you who have tuned in, if you're not on freedomslips.com, you want to join the chat room, because as we proceed through the shows, those of you who are new and those of you who have been listening for quite some time,